Hello, BookTube. Well, I just made a video, Friday Reads video, telling you some of the things I'd be reading this weekend. And in that video, I mentioned that the reason I'd be reading those things is because March is at an end. And that reminded me that that a whole nother video is called for, because at the end of every month, we do here at BookTube, we do wrap-ups and TBRs. My March wrap-up and my April TBR. Those of you who've been watching this channel for any length of time will know that doesn't really work for me. For instance, in March, I reached an all-time personal goal for the largest number of books read in one month in my life. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna drag you through them all, and I hope to meet or exceed that number for April. So ditto. So what I do on this channel is, instead of a TBR, it's a TBR BY, to be read by you, in which I point out 10 books that are coming out in the following month, or some of them are probably out already, that you'll be able to see in your bookstore on the new release tables or at the new release wall of your library, that I wholeheartedly recommend to you. Sort of a version of me being right next to you when you're browsing that doesn't involve covering you in dog hair. And I thought I'd just go through them now. Now, I've tried a couple of times showing images on my iPad here on the MacBook, and it appears to work less well than it did on the iPhone. So I'm gonna try to do it. I think I have to hold the iPad at an angle. But the first book I want to show you is The Evangelicals by Francis Fitzgerald. That is the book. And it's a big, thick history of evangelicalism in the course of American history, from Cotton Mather and Jonathan Edwards all the way to the present day. And it is tremendously good. And one of the main things that's good about it is how objective it is. Despite the fact that it would be easy not to be. The evangelical movement in America has been responsible for a lot of good, enough good so that a writer could easily be partisan, and also a huge amount of bad, enough bad easily so that a writer could write just a hit job. And instead, Francis Fitzgerald does neither. Does a superbly intelligent job with a subject matter that a lot of writers would find it hard to be objective when they're writing about it. I can't recommend the book high enough if you have an interest in the religious history of this country. I reviewed the book for the Christian Science Monitor, and I think it's going to be in the print edition, in the next print edition, sometime soon in April. But I wouldn't be surprised, as I say in that review, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this book wins her another Pulitzer Prize. And it would be well-deserved if it is. Certainly be on every shortlist. Then our next book is a reprint. It's Diana Athill. It's Florence Diary. This is a very spry and funny and atmospheric diary that she kept of a trip to Florence that she made half a century ago. So it's in some ways, the Florence that it depicts has disappeared. But I forget the name of the publisher, but they did a lovely little reprint volume. I was so happy when I got it in the mail. And it's really a gem of travel writing, impressionistic writing. So if we're on the idea here of me recommending these things to you in a bookstore, if you like travel diaries, and especially slightly antique travel diaries, like, for instance, The Stones of Florence by Mary McCarthy, if you like that kind of arch, very witty, very intelligent writing style from a half a century ago, this is a book for you, and it's not long. It'd be a nice thing to add to your collection. And then the next one, we go right back to religion. I call them like I see them. This is another absolutely landmark book, another absolutely brilliant, must-read book if you're interested in the subject at all. This is by Alec Ryrie, and it is Protestants, the Faith That Made the Modern World. It's a great big thing, and he's a fantastically engaging writer on the subject of Protestantism, on the subject of Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation and the Protestant faith and all of its iterations, but also on faith just in general. There's a YouTube video that you absolutely have to watch about the Christian church under Nazi rule. The whole thing it's a free lecture series that you can watch on YouTube. I will remember to put the link down below. And if I forget, remind me, because it's incredible. It's worth watching from beginning to end. It is so much more worth your time than a lot of the other ways you could sit and watch an hour on a screen. No names, mind you. No implications at all. But if, for instance, you're cooking a big meal or you're sitting in the living room with your family and you want to watch something that is absolutely great for an hour, put that on the big screen and watch it. You'll be talking about it for days. But that's just YouTube. One way or another, this book is well worth your time if you're interested in the subject. He's an amazing writer. Then we go to nature. We'll do a couple of nature books. The first one is I don't want you to judge it on surface appearance alone. It's by Richard Jones, and it's called The Call of Nature, The Secret Life of Dung. And there on the cover, you have not only the perpetrator, but also the benefactors, a gigantic African elephant and dung beetles. But it's not just that. I mean, that's the natural thing that comes to mind if you know anything about, animals. When you talk about dung, is that on the African savannah there's a whole bunch of dung. First of all, elephants, when they leave behind droppings, leave behind a lot of droppings, and they're not the only ones. But if you walk around in the scrubland in the savannah of Africa, you will notice one thing right away, which is nothing ever goes to waste. Nothing ever goes to waste. This is an extremely old and vibrant ecosystem in which niche users of all kinds have developed over the millennia. And you wouldn't think that even a writer as good as Richard Jones could make a whole book on dung and make it interesting. But he does. He does. So if dung interests you, let's just move on. The next one is by, I'm going to try and pronounce this right, is Maja Safstrom, something like that. It's Animals of a Bygone Era, an illustrated compendium. And the illustrations are absolutely charming. This author also did one on dinosaurs, I believe. But this has saber-toothed tigers, the plesiosaur, the woolly mammoth, all the usual suspects, saber-tooth, that sort of thing. And it's just delightful. It's just delightful. If you're a nature fan, or if, for instance, you know a smart kid who is, you can't go wrong. Then we have, this is science fiction. This is Cold Welcome by Elizabeth Moon, returning to science fiction after, I think, over a decade, with her Kailara Rada. This is a recurring character of hers in a set back in some of her most popular stories. But I want to stress, if I were in a bookstore and I were talking to customers, I would stress that you don't need to read anything else by this character or this author to get this book. It stands alone just fine, and it's really intelligent. It's Elizabeth Moon at her best. I was very happy to see it. Then we have more fiction. This is war fiction, contemporary war fiction, which is a glut in bookstores, but a lot of it is really bad. This one is really good. In fact, it might be brilliant. It's Brian Van Reet. It, I believe, is a debut novel. It's called Spoils, and it stars a cast of characters in war-torn Baghdad of the present day, on all sides of the ideological question, on all sides of the military question, and it's extremely good. It's extremely visceral and evocative, and I'm not. It doesn't have an ending, but that's okay. I no longer even expect it of contemporary fiction. I just expect I'm going to be disappointed by the last 20 pages, but the rest of the book, I recommend it. As contemporary fiction, I recommend it. And also, slightly more specialized, if you know somebody who has served in Iraq or Afghanistan, I strongly recommend this book for them if they're the reading type, because I think they'll really like it. And then our next one is also fiction, but it's not contemporary fiction. I think we've seen it on this channel before. It is the new Everyman's Library edition of The Duke's Children by Anthony Trollope. And this is the title, I don't know if you can see it, says the only complete edition. And that's because when Anthony Trollope originally wrote The Duke's Children, he wrote it much longer than his publisher ended up wanting it to be. His market marketability was declining, and his publisher thought, I can't really sell this at the length that you have it. What I'd like you to do is cut thousands of words from this manuscript. And he did. He didn't like it, but he did. And as the person who this edition makes clear, he was a careful cutter. It's not like he just took a chapter out or two to get his book down to fighting weight. Instead, he went through line by line, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, pulling out stuff, refining other stuff. And when I first heard that, I am a big fan of Anthony Trollope, and as luck would have it, The Duke's Children is my favorite of his books, of all of his 50 books. And when I first heard the description of what was going on here, this was originally printed in one of those Folio Society private things that I never saw, I don't think even heard of. So I was very happy to see that this was coming to market, and when I heard what it was, I thought, well, how different can it possibly be? So I read this eagerly, and then I reread it, and it is different. There's more. It's a more ample book. It's a more secure and confident book. It is the original artistic conception of an author who, with whom that actually matters. Nothing earth-shaking changes. No characters drop out of sight or reappear out of nowhere or get really more than we did in the original version. That you can read in, for instance, Oxford World Classics has the expurgated version. But it's just a delight because it's more of the Duke's Children. I don't know anyone who loves Trollope who doesn't get to the end of their favorite Trollope novel and always wish, gee, I wish there were more. And this is the end of the Palliser series, his series of high parliamentary novels. And you get to the end of that, and you really wish there were more Palliser novels. It's not like his Barchester Towers novels. His Barchester novels end with a conclusion. He knew that he was going to leave that fictional county and never come back. And he wrote a big, fat, very satisfying book that ends that story. The Duke's Children, the original, the expurgated version that I read, and I've reread many times, kind of sort of leaves open whether or not he might want to go back to the Pallisers and tell one more book. And, he said in letters to friends that he was thinking about it. There was rumors that he was thinking about it. It never happened. So this is the closest we're going to get. And I don't know if there are any Trollope fans out there, but if there are, and you haven't read The Duke's Children, or you have, get an Everyman Library Edition. It's a lovely thing. You'll be glad you did. We'll go back to more accessible stuff for this next one. And this next one we go from delightful to horrifying. This is by Michele McPhee, and it's called Maximum Harm. And it is her study of the Boston Marathon bombing and the Boston Marathon bombers, the Tsarnaev brothers, specifically the older brother, the one who died during the manhunt. And McPhee has a lot of uncomfortable questions to ask in this book. Not just about what could radicalize the younger brother, Dzhokhar, who is now living 3 square meals a day, Wi-Fi, a warm room, all the TV that he can watch at taxpayer expense in Massachusetts for the rest of his life, for the next 80 years. For intentionally killing people, cutting a little boy in half, and smiling on camera while he was doing it. And instead of being shot in the head on closed-circuit camera for the survivors to watch in private, he's being funded by the United States government while he writes his memoirs, I guess. But this book mainly concentrates on the older brother, the more seriously radicalized brother, and asks very uncomfortable questions about what he actually knew about the American government and what the American government knew about him. Did the FBI make him promises? Did they pay him money? Did they try to use him as an asset before he went nuts and attacked a whole crowd full of people? And some of the answers that McPhee comes up with, if you're interested in this subject, if you were, for instance, God forbid, in Boston at the time, it's very much worth a read. It is in every way that I can think of more satisfying than The Brothers by Maja, which was the last book on the subject. So I strongly recommend it if you're interested in that subject matter. And then the last thing we'll do for today, for this TBR BY, is a little bit unusual, but then maybe not. Who knows what you consider usual or unusual on this channel. I got it and was expecting nothing of it except a ghost-written mess, and I really liked it, and that surprises me, so I want to recommend it. And it's this. It's Nevertheless by Alec Baldwin. It's Alec Baldwin's memoir. And I was expecting it to be self-serving and bloated and full of cliches and obviously written by somebody else. And I got none of that. Instead, I got a remarkably frank and sometimes very funny account, an actor's account of himself. So, you know, in the little subgenre of actor memoirs, actor and actress memoirs, they're usually god-awful. This one I think is really good. This one I think is well worth your time. So if you see it in a bookstore and you're thinking, well, I'm interested in Alec Baldwin and his life, but I don't want a snow job. I don't want just some, you know, window dressing piece of garbage. This isn't that. So give it a try if that subject interests you. And there you go. That is an April TBR BY. If you see these books in the bookstore and the subjects interest you, you have my recommendation to try them. And they, of course, will not be the only April books that we talk about on this channel. It's just for now I'm going to go. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.